Yeah, well, it turns out that there's plenty that can stop us now. Right now, we're at the scene of a breakdown at Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, a scene that has been reproduced many times. We're going to tell you what's wrong with Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, all coming up next on Fresh Bake. That queue that I just showed you, that is a queue of some kind, is just of guests trying to figure out what's going on with Runaway Railway. It's not, hi, it's not a queue to get on. It's not a queue to scan your lightning lane or your virtual queue. It's just a queue of people that got in it thinking they're going to find something out. The ride is closed. And that's what they're going to find out when they go through the end of that queue. They're going to find out that the ride is closed. Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway is off to kind of a rocky start. I mean, opening day wasn't too bad, but there were breakdowns. Matter of fact, it broke down on us while we were in the queue that night. And then there's been regular breakdowns in the week since. So what's happening? I mean, it's not a ride with a lot of points of failure outside of the trackless system and the unique way in which the train separates, that's more illusion than a practical feature. And by that I mean the train was never really together to begin with. The train is comprised of 4 separate ride vehicles that look like they're connected. But I digress. What's wrong with Runaway Railway? Why does it keep breaking down? I figure there are 3 possibilities, the first of which is the same issue that Rise ran into, and it still does, I'm sure, any trackless system would. They're trackless, yes, but that actually complicates things even more because now everything is track. Therefore, the floor, the surface the vehicle travels on, has to be basically flawless. If there are any defects detected, it triggers a ride stoppage and the track, quote unquote, has to be cleared. Now, of course, it's not as simple as someone running out there, grabbing the hat off the floor, then running back and hitting the switch again to turn the ride back on. In most cases, when a ride has a stoppage, they've got to cycle the ride vehicles again. And that could take a little while. Like when Rise goes down, I don't think it's ever been for less than 45 minutes, right? Seems like 45 minutes or more. This, though, is just one of the reasons why Rise goes down. And from this distance, by the way, Rise appears to be a more complex ride system than Railway, with more potential points of failure. One of those points of failure is also something that it shares with Runaway Railway. Both rides are trackless. They are essentially the same ride system in terms of how the ride vehicles operate and go from point A to point B. Now, with traditional ride systems like Space Mountain or Big Thunder, the tracks both propel and guide the ride vehicle. All you have to do is give it a push, and then the track and gravity do the rest. Now, in modern coasters, where they do still use a track for guidance, magnets are used for propulsion. These magnets are what allow the vehicle to be programmatically stopped, for example, in the middle of a ride, and then launched again from a dead stop. Now, that tech, that's a whole other conversation, but I mention it here to demonstrate the ways in which ride systems can vary and how often the more technical they get, the more likely they are to break down. Runaway Railway is trackless. That means they have to electronically provide both the propulsion for the vehicle and they have to guide it. And it does this over the air using some form of wireless protocol. Not exactly Wi-Fi, but something like that. And like any wireless system, it is subject to failure if there's any kind of meaningful interference with that signal. Now, it's hard to say what those potential interferences might be in the case of Runaway Railway, but certainly they are more significant than the kinds of things that might get in the way of your Wi-Fi signal at home. But the concept is the same, more or less. So it's quite reasonable to expect that those Runaway Railway ride vehicles moving about independently, from any kind of track, all by themselves with nothing more than a wireless signal to guide them, it's reasonable to think that at some point it loses connection with the host guiding it. It's a modern day problem that we all have to deal with, and is a reason why I still love good old-fashioned analog. The digital revolution has advanced things to be more quote-unquote convenient, but all it's really done is create a different set of obstacles to overcome. Sure, there are fewer mechanical issues with the track, for example, but Big Thunder never had to worry about whether or not it could operate on a rainy day. Which, by the way, is exactly the kind of problem that Luigi's Rollicking Roadster faces. Now, that was the first trackless ride system that we saw here at Disneyland Resort, and I remember the first time it had rained since the ride opened, and it simply could not run. Luigi's couldn't run in the rain, and it still can't. Now, of course, that's not the only ride that does close when it rains. Teacups and Alice at Disneyland come to mind, but it's not a problem that most other attractions face. You can ride Dumbo in any weather. I've done it. It's awesome. Now, having said all of that, I don't believe this to be the primary issue with Runaway Railway. Certainly it's a factor. I'm sure that it's happened at least once or twice, but it's also something that Disney, I hope, is fully aware of, and they planned for that in advance and done as much as they could to minimize that issue. By the way, before we go on, this reminds me of I heard anecdotally that, and this is kind of funny if it's true, I've heard that one of the ride closures at Railway was due to the host machine's operating system had to perform an automatic update. Now, all the software running these attractions in the parks, they operate on good old-fashioned PCs, of some kind. And as you know, operating systems require maintenance updates. And those updates, once completed, require the machine running it to shut down and restart. It's annoying at home. I know. I hate it. It probably is even more so at Disneyland. Now, I'm not sure if this is a real thing that happened, but I mention it here because it's a real thing that could happen, the sensitivity of this type of system. Also, while we're at it, I've heard from a few people that Indiana Jones' ride system is still, or was still at least, as of a few months ago, running on Windows 98. Now, I would say normally, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Maybe that's what they're thinking. But Indy is broke, so hopefully they fixed it. With that, there is, I believe, to be a third potential fail point, and I think this might be the one that may be causing the additional fails. This is sort of the wild card. As we've covered already, Runaway Railway is trackless. Thus, it is responsible for its own propulsion and its own guidance. Where classic roller coasters use a chain to pull the ride vehicle up to the crest of a hill and then rely on gravity to do the rest, and where modern roller coasters use electromagnetic propulsion to create launch speed, Runaway Railway, again, uses neither. Instead, they use batteries, as does Rise of the Resistance and Luigi's. Stick around at Rise of the Resistance after you land safely on Batuu and watch the ride vehicles leave the unload station and head back to the loading area. On the ground at each station are charging pads. As soon as the vehicle is parked, connections are made between the vehicle and that charging station, and the vehicle charges up for however long it takes for the guests to leave the vehicle. Then the process is repeated once it arrives at the boarding area, charging up again for however long it takes for the guests to get in the vehicle. And this whole charging process, I assume, is enough. They get enough charge between the loading and unloading to make the full distance between points A and points B on the ride. It's the same system, actually, that they use at Luigi's Rollicking Roadsters also, but it is not the same system used at Runaway Railway. Though it is essentially the same ride system, in terms of the vehicles, Runaway Railway charges its vehicles using those tracks right there. They look like proper train tracks, right? This is, Runaway Railway after all, and so you do need train tracks, I would assume. But the actual track portion, that's the point of contact for the ride vehicle and where it charges while guests are loading and unloading. And it's interesting. As you leave the station, you can still see the tracks on the ground, but once you pass the loading area, you can see the track is no longer practical. It's simply painted on the ground. So there's a practical track and then a painted track. Then once the vehicles separate from the train, there's no tracks at all, real or fake. I'm not certain why Disney chose a different system for charging the vehicles, but I do think there's a reasonable chance It's one of the wild cards factoring into the ride's excess downtime. So the question is, are the connections maybe not secure enough? Note that in the Rise system, the points of contact appear very definite and very secure. Whereas on Railway, I can kind of see where it might be kind of hit or miss. Also note that with Railway, there are 4 opportunities for the charging to fail. We mentioned in the opening that though it's one train to the eye, that train is actually made up of 4 separate individual ride vehicles. It's also the reason why there are 4 separate operating stations at the loading area, 1 for each car, 1 CM each manning them. So if any one of those cars runs out of charge, then the whole chain has to stop. The whole ride stops. Now, for what it's worth, again, I go back to my analog. For what it's worth, we never run out of gravity. I'm just saying. I'm an analog guy. Take me to the top of that hill and then drop me, right? And I would assume, I guess, also that the laws governing magnets, they don't stop working either for whatever that's worth. And I think that's what causes some of these additional issues with trackless ride systems like Rise of the Resistance, like Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. Here's something that I've heard. There are reports of cast members physically having to push a ride vehicle off stage, off the track and into backstage. That to me suggests a dead vehicle, a dead charge. So in conclusion, while there are 3 likely reasons why the Runaway Railway is breaking down, flaws on the surface that are in the way of the ride vehicles, potential loss of wireless connection between the ride vehicle and the software host, or simply difficulties with getting the ride vehicles charged. I do think that Disney can overcome all of these, and soon. Maybe not completely, but at least well enough that guests can enjoy the ride without too much anxiety. At least to a degree that competes with other attractions that we've become okay with. We're kind of okay with Indy, we're kind of okay with Rise, that kind of situation. It'll probably be better than both of those, in my opinion. But hopefully this helps to understand what is happening with Runaway Railway, and by extension also, as I mentioned, Rise of the Resistance. And maybe also, in the process, allow some to feel a little more love for analog systems like the Matterhorn or Big Thunder or Space Mountain. But do enjoy this ride. Today it may require a little patience, but I think it's worth it. It is perhaps one of the most complete experiences available in the park. All in, it's a 5-tool player. It's a triple threat. It's got everything covered. It's a terrific blend of projections and practical effects. The queue is, of course, outstanding, made with lots of care and lots of Easter eggs and attention to detail. And I really do feel like I'm going to see a Mickey Mouse short at the El Capitan Theater. And that's something that should be recognized as being part of the total experience. People want to talk about just the ride, but it's more than that. It's a total show. I even love the song. It's catchy, maybe even a bit of an earworm, but that's why it's great. That's why it's going to go down in infamy the same way that It's a Small World has, is my guess. And of course, I love Mickey Mouse. And I am very happy that he has a ride of his own, and Minnie, for that matter, a ride of his own in Toontown, which, by the way, is now a destination for more guests, more so than it has ever been. Makes the land better, both by its mere presence, but also because they had to upgrade the land in general in order to make it, a proper and just home for an amazing attraction. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoy Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. That's what I'm going to do right now, in fact, so stay with us for more. Not nearly as full as opening day, huh? Oh, there goes the ghost. Look at that. I can't go in there if I want to. Well, well, yeah, but that's not cool. I want to walk through there, man. What are you doing?
The one person at Disneyland who wants to walk.
I would do it. I wish this were going slower right now. Did they already fix it?
Yeah.
How do you make it even more permanent, though? It was already bolted in there, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I'm glad that they fixed it already, though. I'm glad. I never noticed that one. Oh, they used the cast member's costume for the popcorn twirler. The pepper is back, safe and sound again, been restored. I very much appreciate Disney being so quick to replace the pepper shaker that was there before, that somebody so indiscriminately removed from the queue. Shame on you, whoever you are. But Disney's right there. They're not going to let that go. They're just going to keep putting it back on there.
3, 1, 2, 3. Oh, excellent. You're all waltzing so beautifully together. Now, let's
press all the buttons and see what happens. If you don't have any other plans, what the heck, niggers? Told you nothing was gonna go wrong.
Nothing can stop us now.